can you help me with the soup?" "Of course, let me get the small spoon." He smiled, soft and quick, like it was a habit, like I was already half gone. I watched him open the container, steam slipping into the sterile air. My hospital gown clung to my back. The IV beeped once, then went quiet. He stirred the soup, but didn't feed me. He forgot? Or maybe he didn't care. His phone was face down. That was new. The nurse came in, adjusted my drip, and nodded at him like they shared a secret. Or maybe I was just tired. Maybe everything felt like a warning now. I hadn't cried in weeks. The body saves its strength. But my chest ached like something was breaking slowly from the inside. Not the illness, something else. He was talking about parking fees, about how hard it was to sleep on the chair. His voice was low, practiced. I listened like I was underwater. Then the screen on his phone lit up. I caught the name. I shouldn't have, but I did. He didn't answer. He just looked at it and smiled. The spoon was still in his hand, but he didn't move. And in that silence, I knew something quietly, terribly true. He wasn't here to help me heal. He was waiting for me to disappear. The day they told me, the lights in the clinic buzzed louder than usual. Not a metaphor, just a failing fluorescent bulb overhead. It flickered 3 times before it steadied. I counted. 3 flickers. Then the doctor's mouth moved. The words didn't reach me right away. They hovered in the air between us like something I didn't want to catch. Lymphoma, aggressive, stage 3. I blinked. He handed me a printout, as if that made it easier. Black ink on white paper. Clinical, safe, far away from what was actually happening inside my body. I nodded, didn't cry, just nodded like I'd heard a weather report. My husband, Mark, squeezed my hand. "We'll fight this," he said. Strong, confident, like a man in a movie. I noticed how tightly he held on, a little too tightly, like he was holding up a performance more than holding me. I wanted to throw up, but instead, I smiled. My body froze. My mind drifted to dinner. Chicken, maybe, rice. I remembered I left the laundry in the washer. That's the thing with news like this. It doesn't knock you over. It breaks you from the inside out, slowly, like dry rot. At home, he made tea. Chamomile, my least favorite. I drank it anyway. He started talking about treatment schedules, second opinions, anti-nausea meds, so many lists, so much certainty. But I wasn't listening to what he said. I was listening to how calm he was. Too calm. Like he had been here before. Like he had practiced. The first chemo session came too soon. The chair was cold. The nurse was kind, but distant. She asked me to rate my pain on a scale. I wanted to say, "Does it count if the pain isn't in the body?" I said 5. It was easier. Mark brought crossword puzzles, the big Sunday ones, even though it was Tuesday. He said they'd keep my brain sharp. I tried to thank him, but the words got stuck somewhere between my stomach and my mouth. He posted a photo on Facebook, me in the chair, blanket tucked around me, IV in my arm. Caption, "Fighter, strongest woman I know." He didn't ask before posting it. I didn't comment, didn't share, just stared at the photo like it was someone else. The likes poured in, hearts, prayers, comments from people I hadn't seen since college. I felt like a character in someone else's documentary. The days blurred. Nausea came and went like an unwanted guest. Sometimes it left long enough for me to pretend I was okay. Hair fell out in handfuls. I cried for that, quietly, in the shower. He said, "It'll grow back," and I wondered if he was trying to comfort me or himself. One night, I woke up around 3 a.m. and saw his silhouette glowing blue in the hallway, his face lit by his phone screen. He didn't see me watching. He laughed, softly. Then his voice dropped low and quiet. I didn't ask who he was talking to. I told myself it was work, or a friend, or someone trying to distract him from all this. But even then, I didn't believe it. At my second round of chemo, he was late. Said he had to get gas, but the tank was 3/4 full. I checked. I sat in the chair alone, wrapped in that scratchy brown hospital blanket. A woman across from me was crying, not from pain, From someone not showing up. I didn't ask. I just listened. She looked at me and said, "You know?" I nodded. At home, I found an envelope on the kitchen counter, not addressed to me, a doctor's bill with a woman's name I didn't recognize. I Googled it. She lived in his hometown, 2 towns over. I didn't say anything. Not yet. He kissed me that night, on the forehead, like you kiss a patient, a child, a dying thing, not a wife. Our bedroom grew quieter. He stopped sleeping in the bed full time, said I moved too much in my sleep, said he'd give me more space to rest. He took the guest room. He brought me soup, always from the same place. The receipt was never in the bag. That's when I started noticing. It wasn't that he was cruel. It was worse than that. He was polite, helpful, gentle. He told the nurses I liked extra pillows. He remembered which side I preferred to lie on. He tracked my meds on an app. He even reminded me to drink water. But his eyes weren't on me anymore. They were always just behind me, past me, already somewhere else. People kept saying how lucky I was to have him. "He's so devoted," they'd whisper, like I wasn't there. "You can tell he loves her." I nodded, smiled, because correcting them took energy I didn't have, and because if I told the truth that he had already left me in every way except physically, they'd look at me like I was the crazy one. You don't say bad things about good men doing their best, even when their best is just waiting. One day, I found him in the bathroom with the door ajar. He was reading a book, Preparing for Loss, a guide for caregivers. There was a page folded down, a checklist. Start separating finances. Begin preparing yourself emotionally. Consider your life beyond their illness. He hadn't marked anything off yet. I closed the door quietly. Later that evening, he asked if I wanted to update our will. He said it gently, with kindness, with that low, soft voice. I nodded, because what else was I going to do? When he left the room, I took out a notebook and wrote 3 words. He's moving on. Not later, now. The next morning, he brought me breakfast in bed. Toast, sliced fruit, tea. "I'm proud of you," he said. "You're handling this so well." I looked at the tray. Everything perfect, cut into small pieces like I was already fragile beyond repair. I said thank you, and in my head I whispered, "You're already gone." There wasn't a single moment when it all collapsed. No yelling, no betrayal caught in bed, no lipstick on a shirt or secret email. Just silence. Longer silences. Less eye contact. More efficient kindness. I think he thought that would be enough, that if he played the role, I wouldn't see the truth. But I did. I saw it every time he smiled at a message I didn't send. Every time he praised me to others but avoided me at home. Every time he took my picture but didn't look at me in it. One night, I lay awake listening to the wind knock against the window. It made the house feel too big. I reached over to his side of the bed, cold, no surprise. I whispered into the dark, "You don't have to stay." Not because I wanted him to leave, because I needed to hear what he'd say. He didn't answer. I started writing more things down. The names I heard, the patterns, the small withdrawals from our account. I didn't know what I was building yet, but I knew I wasn't imagining it, and I wasn't going to forget. I wasn't just sick, I was being left, slowly, politely, and with a smile. That was the shock, not the diagnosis, not the hair, not the vomiting or fatigue or nights I thought I wouldn't wake up. The real shock was this, that he was already planning his life without me and pretending he wasn't. The nausea finally lessened, just enough for me to taste toast again, just enough to stop dreading the smell of tea. It was barely a shift, but when your body has been in war, even a slight truce feels like spring. The doctor called it a window, a good response to chemo, a pause, maybe remission, maybe not, but a break in the storm. Mark smiled when we got the news. He even laughed. Real, almost. He reached for my hand and said, "We should go somewhere." I asked where. He said, "Somewhere quiet, near water. You always loved the sea." He remembered. It made my throat tighten. We picked a weekend, 2 weeks away, a small rental near the coast, not far, just enough to feel elsewhere. He booked it, sent me the link, even let me choose the room with the balcony. That night, I sat in bed, looking at the photos of the rental. White walls, a small kitchen, an outdoor tub under a wooden awning. I imagined myself in that tub, under the sky, without a hospital band on my wrist. I let myself hope, just a little. I told my sister. She smiled through the phone. "That sounds good. You deserve it." Her voice caught on the word deserve. I pretended not to notice. At dinner that night, I felt stronger. I held the spoon without shaking. I finished all my rice. He told me I looked good, really good. Then he added, "You're almost glowing." That made me pause. Not the words, but the way he said them. Like he was surprised, as if he hadn't expected me to bounce back at all. I began walking again, slowly, up and down the block. The neighbors waved, but some of them didn't recognize me. Cancer strips you down, changes your shape, your smell, your presence. But I walked anyway. One foot, then the other. I texted Mark photos of flowers I passed. He sent back heart emojis. The week before the trip, I asked him to take me to the grocery store. I hadn't been in months. He hesitated. "Are you sure?" I said yes. I wanted to choose the tea myself. He nodded, then turned back to his phone. The same smile again, quiet, private. That night, I checked his call log when he fell asleep. One number, repeated, no name. I copied it onto a sticky note, folded it, put it in my wallet. Did nothing with it, not yet. The trip came. He packed the car carefully, like he always did, with that calm order that used to comfort me. Now it felt like he was organizing a goodbye. I didn't say that aloud. The drive was silent for the first hour. Then he put on music, my playlist, old favorites. That surprised me. He even sang along, off-key, the way he used to. I wanted to believe that meant something. I needed to believe. The cottage was exactly like the pictures. He opened the door for me like a gentleman. "Welcome to our temporary paradise," he said, a little dramatically. I smiled. For one night, I believed him. We ate on the deck. The air was warm. The ocean was close enough to hear, not see. He poured wine. I had water. I remember laughing, really laughing, at something he said, something stupid, about seagulls and retirement. I felt a sharp, brief joy, like a match flaring in the dark. It faded quickly, but it had been real. That night, I lay in bed and watched him sleep, his mouth slightly open, chest rising and falling in rhythm. I traced the outline of his face in my memory, wondered if this was the last version of him I'd remember. He stirred, mumbled something, then turned away from me. I stared at the ceiling for hours. The second day, he disappeared for an hour, said he went to buy coffee, but the place was 10 minutes away. When he came back, he had a small brown bag and a grin. got your favorite scones. They weren't my favorite. I didn't correct him. I sat on the balcony that afternoon and dialed the number from his call log. Blocked. Of course it was. But now I knew for sure he was hiding something. That evening, I asked him about the future. What do you think happens if I go into remission? He looked at me too quickly, then said, "We'll go back to normal." Is that what you want? He nodded, too fast, then said, "Of course, why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I?" That was the moment. Something in me folded. I wanted to believe in the trip, in the soup, the music, the scones, but it all started to feel staged, as if he had read somewhere that this was the part where the husband becomes the anchor, the redeemer, the hero of the second act. And I, the weak, grateful woman, was supposed to clutch his hand and thank him. I didn't. The third day, I found a second phone in his backpack. No password, just one app open. Messages. From her. Can't wait till next week. She seems better. That's inconvenient. Just be patient. You're doing great. I didn't make a sound. I closed the screen, put the phone back, went outside and stood in the wind until my hands stopped shaking. He found me there, said, "You okay?" I said, "Yeah, just tired." He kissed my cheek. I smiled. Inside, something had already shifted. Hope didn't vanish. It changed form. I still had it, but it no longer included him. That night, he made a fire, took pictures, posted one with the caption, "Healing, grateful, stronger every day." I watched the likes flood in, friends, his family, acquaintances, all celebrating a man who stayed. They didn't know he was leaving in pieces. Back home, I began making lists, small things first, passwords, accounts, safe deposit box keys, then bigger things, the will, the lawyer's name, the hospital file, the mortgage deed I'd never read until now. I booked an appointment with a therapist, told no one, started writing again, just pieces, lines, like, healing is not trusting someone again. Healing is trusting yourself, enough not to need to. One night, he brought me a cup of tea, sat at the edge of the bed. "I know I've been distant," he said. I looked at him. He looked away. I just didn't know how to handle all of this. He didn't say sorry. I didn't ask for it. I said, "Thank you for the trip." He smiled. I didn't. The call from my doctor came the next morning. "Scans look good," she said. "We'll keep watching, but for now, you're stable." Stable. I hung up and sat in silence. I didn't tell him. Not right away. I wanted to feel it alone. Later that night, I told him I wanted to take a short trip. Alone. He looked surprised. "Now?" I nodded. He asked, "Why?" I said, "Because I'm not dying, and I want to remember who I am without this house or you." He didn't answer right away, then said, "If that's what you want." I smiled. That was the difference now. I knew what I wanted, and I didn't need permission anymore. He started calling me Champ again. It was an old nickname from years ago, back when we ran 5Ks together and argued over takeout. Hearing it now felt strange, like it didn't fit anymore, like it belonged to someone else he used to love. He'd drop it into casual conversation. "Morning, Champ." "You're doing great, Champ." "Need help with your meds, Champ?" At first, I smiled, out of habit. But the more he said it, the more it felt like a script he was trying to stick to, like he was trying to glue things back together with words that used to mean something. After the trip, things looked smoother. He was more present, he cooked more, did the dishes, even started playing music in the house again. Soft jazz, like he was setting a mood. He complimented my strength, praised how well I was recovering. He touched me more, A hand on my shoulder, a brush of my hair, gentle, timed, calculated almost. It looked love. It wasn't. People began visiting again, friends, family. They said things like, "You two are solid. You're lucky to have each other. Some men wouldn't have stayed." Each time, he smiled, small, humble, practiced. I said nothing, not because I agreed, but because I didn't have the words for the kind of absence he carried with him. He was physically close, emotionally not even in the same house. The new me, post-treatment me, walked slower, spoke quieter, but listened better. I started noticing things I hadn't before. His phone never rang out loud anymore, always on silent, always face down. He took walks after dinner. "Just need some air," he'd say. He never used to. Once, he left his jacket behind. I checked the pocket. There was a folded receipt from a bar in a part of town we never went to. Just 2 drinks on it. Neat handwriting circled the total. No note, no explanation. I folded it back and put it exactly where I found it. I started checking the mail again, the physical kind. One envelope was addressed to both of us, from an insurance company. I opened it. It listed a recent policy update, a change in beneficiary, from my name to estate. Technically, not suspicious, but the timing was convenient. I asked him about it that night while we were folding laundry. "Oh yeah, just consolidating things," he said, without even looking up from the towel he was folding. "So I'm not the beneficiary anymore?" He shrugged. "They recommended streamlining everything." I nodded, didn't push. That was the thing. If I confronted him now, he'd retreat. If I stayed quiet, he kept talking. And in his talking, the truth always leaked out. One afternoon, I caught him humming in the garage. He didn't know I was home early from therapy. I stood quietly in the hallway and listened. The tune wasn't familiar, but the words he murmured under his breath, something about freedom and waiting, lodged in me like a splinter. When he saw me, he jumped slightly. "Hey," he said, "didn't hear you come in." "I took an earlier slot," I said. He nodded too quickly. I noticed a flash drive on the table behind him. When I glanced toward it, he moved in front of it. "Just organizing some old files," he added. Too fast, too specific. He started suggesting we clean out the attic, said it was time to lighten the load. I agreed, but I watched what he chose to throw away. My old journals, cards I wrote him years ago. He tossed them in the donate pile like they were expired coupons. I pulled them out later and hid them in a box in the back of my closet. Not because I wanted them, because I wanted proof that I had once existed in this house in full color. One night, I woke up and found him on the porch, sitting in the dark, smoking. He doesn't smoke. I watched from the hallway for 5 minutes. He never touched his phone, just stared at the sky like he was waiting for something to fall. When I finally stepped outside, he put out the cigarette fast. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded, just couldn't sleep. I didn't say anything, just sat beside him. He didn't reach for me. My strength was returning in small ways. I cooked again, just once or twice, enough to feel my hands making something. He praised me like I was a child drawing a picture. "So proud of you," he said, clapping once. Something about that clap, loud, sharp, made my stomach twist. It wasn't love, it was performance. Then came the morning I heard him speaking in the backyard. I thought he was on the phone, but when I looked out the window, I saw no phone in his hand. He was rehearsing something, a speech. Something about, "She's not the same," I heard. "I've tried, God knows I've tried. But you can't help someone who's already half gone." I didn't move, didn't breathe. He repeated it twice more, word for word, then turned and walked back inside. That night, he brought me flowers, not my kind, bright red roses. I hate roses. He said, just felt like celebrating. I asked, what are we celebrating? He paused, then said, you, us, this second chance, and smiled, like a mask. I called my lawyer the next day, not for anything drastic, just to update some documents, emergency contacts, bank accounts, medical access. I said it was precautionary. I didn't explain more. That week, I noticed his car was gone during hours he said he was working from home. I installed a location tracker, not out of rage, out of clarity. I didn't want to guess anymore. He started leaving notes, little ones. You're strong. Don't give up. Proud of you. But all of them were written in the same pen, on the same sticky pad, with the same empty font. None of them sounded like him, because they weren't for me. They were for someone watching, or maybe someone he thought was watching. The house felt different, same walls, same sounds, but I knew now it wasn't ours anymore. It was a waiting room. He was waiting to exit without blame. I was waiting to make sure I saw everything before I left. I started journaling again. Each day, I wrote one thing he said that didn't match the truth, one thing he touched that wasn't his, one moment that felt off. I didn't need a confrontation. I needed a record. He told me I looked better than ever, said he was lucky to have me. But when I asked him to look me in the eye and say it again, he blinked, smiled, then changed the subject. I knew the calm wouldn't last, but I let it stretch like a soft hum before thunder. Because now I wasn't just watching him. I was watching myself. And for the first time, I didn't feel lost. I felt like a mirror no one wanted to look into. Not because it lied, but because it told the quiet truth. It started with the charger. Mine had gone missing for a week. I thought I'd left it at the clinic, or maybe lost it in a bag I hadn't unpacked. I didn't say anything, just quietly used the backup one in the drawer. Then one afternoon, I found it, tucked into the back of his sock drawer, still coiled neatly, like it had never been used. I stood there for a long time, not angry, just frozen, like I was staring at something alive under a microscope, realizing for the first time it had teeth. That same night, I heard him on the phone. I was in the kitchen, running water, pretending not to listen. He thought the faucet covered his voice. "She's doing better," he said. Pause. Then, "Yeah, I know. I didn't expect that either." Silence. He laughed once, quiet, like a man in a room full of sleeping people. "No, I haven't told her." I turned off the water. He didn't notice. I sat in bed later and tried to remember the last time we'd had a full conversation, one where no one was performing, where no one had to tiptoe around silence. I couldn't recall. It had all become transaction and timing, like coworkers sharing a project neither of them wanted to lead. The next fracture came 3 days later. He left his computer open. That never happened. He was always careful, always closed every tab, cleared every search. But this time, he forgot. He was in the shower. I told myself I wouldn't look, but my hand moved anyway. The screen was open to his email. The subject line read, "Rental confirmation, week of September 10. We hadn't booked anything. I clicked. It was a cottage, different from the one we stayed in. 2 guests. His name was on the reservation. Mine wasn't. I checked the dates again. That week, he'd told me he had a work retreat. When he came back into the room, I smiled at him, told him I was thinking of planting lavender out back. He nodded, said it was a good idea, then dried his hair and left the computer open again. This time, I didn't need to look. I'd already seen enough. I started listening more carefully, to the pauses, to the way he chose his words, to the silence between sentences. He was always busy now, not just with work, with errands, with catching up on things. He carried a tension that wasn't guilt, it was preparation, like someone training for a clean exit. He changed his scent. I don't know when it started, but one night I leaned in and caught something new on his collar. Not mine, not his usual soap. Something floral, sharp, young. I didn't ask. There was no point. At the clinic, the nurse asked if I wanted to update my emergency contact. I looked at the form for a long time, then left it blank. I visited my sister that weekend, left him a note. Nothing dramatic, just told him I needed a break, some air. He didn't call, didn't check in. When I returned 2 days later, the trash was empty, the bed made, the house too clean. He said he'd been home all weekend, but I could smell perfume on the guest room pillow, not mine. At dinner, he told me I was glowing again. I asked him what that meant. He paused, then said, "You seem more like yourself." I nodded. "Do you like that?" I asked. He tilted his head. "Of course." I waited, then asked, "Or did you like me better when I was sick?" His fork froze mid-air. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. He said nothing, because sometimes silence is the only answer you need. I started journaling more aggressively, not just feelings, facts, times, dates, names. I printed the cottage reservation, wrote down the call log from his phone when I caught a glimpse. He didn't know I'd memorized the passcode. I didn't plan to use it, unless I had to. Then came the email. It was a newsletter, one he must have subscribed to using our shared email by mistake. Subject: Your romantic weekend itinerary, 7 ways to reconnect with her. I clicked, read every word. None of it sounded like me. It was candlelit dinners, horseback rides, couples massages. It was a fantasy version of intimacy built for someone newer, easier. Someone who didn't know how he sounded at 2 a.m. when he couldn't sleep. Someone who hadn't seen his cruelty in quietness. I printed the email, folded it, put it in the back of my journal, right next to the receipt from the bar, and the sticky note with that phone number. My quiet folder of truths was growing. I watched him more closely, not with hate, with precision. He adjusted his routine. Less phone use around me, more talking, more touching, but it all came with timing too perfect to be real. His apologies started appearing in advance, before I could even express concern. Almost like he knew what I was feeling before I said it, which meant one of two things. He was finally paying attention, or he was tracking my emotions like a man following footprints, making sure I didn't get too far ahead. One afternoon, I tested it. I told him I wanted to restart my online art classes. He hesitated, just a second, then said, "That's great, champ, go for it." But his jaw tightened. He didn't like the idea of me expanding again. He was counting on a version of me that shrank. That night, I asked him a quiet question. "Do you think you'd be here if I'd never gotten sick?" He looked caught, then cleared his throat, said, "What kind of question is that?" I said, "An honest one." He didn't answer, just said, "You worry too much." I nodded, but inside, I crossed out another line on my list of doubts. It wasn't a worry anymore. It was a truth. The next fracture came unexpectedly. His friend called our landline. That almost never happened. I answered. The voice on the other end paused, then said, "Hey, is Mark still down in Santa Rosa?" I froze. Santa Rosa was where the new rental was. "Sorry, what?" I asked. "Oh," he said, I thought he was down there all weekend. He mentioned a little trip. I covered quickly. Oh, yeah, I guess. I wasn't with him. Oh, the man said again, awkwardly. Well, just tell him I called. I hung up and stared at the wall for a long time. When he came home, I didn't mention the call. I didn't mention the email, or the perfume, or the voice I heard him rehearsing on the porch. I just made tea, asked how his work retreat went. He smiled, said, productive. Later that night, he touched my cheek, said he missed me. I closed my eyes and let him believe I believed him, but I was already writing the ending in my head. Not the dramatic ending, not screaming, not bags packed in the rain. No, I was writing the quiet one. The one where I stay still long enough for him to forget I'm watching, long enough to collect every piece of truth he's tried to scatter, long enough to make sure I never doubt myself again. The fractures weren't cracks anymore. They were lines, clear, permanent, like veins running through stone. Not weakness, but a map. And I was finally learning how to read it. I found it in the laundry. Not a message, not perfume, not lipstick or hair. A receipt, folded into the pocket of his jeans, washed but still readable. The ink had bled a little, but the words were clear. Dinner for 2, a seafood place, not local. And the date? The night he told me he had a late meeting. I laid it on the kitchen table and just looked at it. My hands didn't shake. I didn't cry. Something inside me had already broken so thoroughly that this didn't splinter anything new. It just confirmed what the quiet had been screaming for months. He walked in a few minutes later, saw me sitting there, saw the receipt. He didn't react right away, just blinked. Then said, "Where'd you find that?" No denial, just logistics. I said, "In your pants pocket with the laundry." He nodded slowly, like that explained everything. "I took a client out," he said. He was calm, too calm, like a man who'd practiced this line. I didn't answer. He stepped closer. "She was from the Santa Rosa account, you know, that project I told you about." I let the silence stretch. He filled it. "She's married," he added, as if that was the reassurance I needed, as if married people didn't cheat, as if he wasn't married to me. I stood up and went to the sink, ran water, let it overflow the glass in my hand. He watched me. I could feel his eyes trying to gauge how much I knew. I dried the glass, set it down, then turned to him and said, "I saw the reservation." His eyes flickered. "What reservation?" I didn't answer, just walked past him. I didn't owe him explanations anymore. That night, I went through the drawer he never let me touch, bottom right of his desk. Inside, a second set of keys, a folder labeled Santa Rosa, an envelope of printed photos. I stared at the photos for a long time. Him, her, by the ocean, in a hammock, in a cafe holding hands. In one, he was wearing the jacket I gave him last winter. She had her hand on his chest. They looked happy, relaxed, like a couple, not like two people lying to the sick woman back home. I didn't tear the photos up, didn't burn them. I scanned them, saved them on a flash drive, then returned them exactly where I found them. I wanted him to think he was still ahead. I opened his laptop next. The password was still the same, lazy. Inside his email, there were dozens of messages, Subject lines like, "Next weekend," "Miss your hands," "Did she ask anything yet?" One of them said, "I'm proud of how you've handled this. You're almost out." Almost out? That was what I was now. A phase, a situation, an obstacle. I opened a spreadsheet titled Timeline. It detailed his transition week by week, what to tell me, when to move accounts. A section labeled Next Steps had this line: "If she worsens, stay. If she stabilizes, reassess." I read it 3 times. If she worsens, stay. If she stabilizes, reassess. That was his plan. That was my worth, measured in tumor size and medical debt. I backed up every file, emailed them to myself, printed hard copies, put them in my journal under the sticky note next to the other truths. My quiet folder had now become an archive, a museum of his betrayal. I didn't confront him that night. Instead, I asked if he wanted tea. He said yes. I made chamomile, his favorite. He sat on the couch and asked what I did today. I said I took a walk. He smiled, said that was good. I nodded and watched him drink. The next morning, I met with my lawyer, told her everything, showed her the files, the pictures, the emails, the spreadsheet. She didn't react, just took notes, quiet, efficient. Then looked up and said, "You have options." It was the first time in months I'd heard that phrase, "You have options." I met with a second lawyer the next day, then a financial advisor, then my therapist. I started building my exit in silence, just like he had. He was still acting like everything was fine, still leaving notes, still complimenting my strength, still lying. But now I wasn't his wife. I was the witness. One night, I heard him talking on the phone, same low voice, but he didn't know I was just outside the door. He said, "No, she doesn't suspect anything. Honestly, I think she's too tired to care." I smiled in the dark, because tired and blind are not the same, and I was no longer either. I made one final move, called the rental agency in Santa Rosa, gave them a fake name, said I was a guest considering a stay, and wanted to know if any reviews mentioned Mark. The woman on the phone paused, then said, "He's one of our regulars, usually books last minute, very polite." I asked, "Does he always come alone?" Another pause, then, "No, always with the same woman. They've been coming for over a year." Over a year? Through my diagnosis, my treatment, my hair falling out, my weight dropping, through it all, he'd been vacationing, building his afterlife while I was still alive. That night, I stood in the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. I no longer looked sick, but I also didn't look like her, not the woman in the photos, not the one with glossy hair and fresh lipstick. I looked real, exhausted, but very, very awake. He came in behind me, wrapped his arms around me, said, "You look beautiful tonight." I looked at him in the mirror. He smiled, and for the first time, I didn't smile back. The next morning, he left early for work. I waited an hour, then opened his drawer again. The folder was gone. So were the photos. So was the flash drive. He was cleaning up, covering his tracks. He knew, or thought he knew, but I had copies of everything. And now, I had clarity. I wasn't broken. I wasn't devastated. I was clear, focused. He had the upper hand for a long time because I was sick, scared, and still hoping. But now I was healing, and hope had been replaced with something stronger: truth. I sat at the kitchen table and looked at my notebook. I turned to a fresh page, wrote one sentence. He doesn't know what I know, but he will. I didn't leave, not yet. I made breakfast, not much: toast, coffee, a few strawberries in a chipped white bowl. He came into the kitchen, kissed the top of my head, and said, "You're spoiling me." I smiled, because that's what I was supposed to do: smile, nurture, obey the script. He didn't know I had a lawyer now, didn't know I had files, didn't know every password I had once trusted him with was changed. I moved like a woman still in love, but I was no longer any version of that. I returned to the hospital for a checkup, alone. Told him it was just blood work. It wasn't. It was a full scan. Results looked good. Borderline remission, the doctor said. We'd know more in 3 months. He asked if I wanted to call my husband. I said no. I'll tell him later, I said. I didn't. I bought a second phone, burner, cash only, no ties. Used it for one thing: emails between me and the team I was building, legal, financial, real estate, because I was leaving, but not without every piece of myself accounted for, not without every document, asset, and clause. I started labeling boxes in the attic, just organizing, I told him. He nodded, didn't realize I was sorting what was mine and what wasn't. Didn't see me scanning old records, setting aside wedding albums, childhood photos, my mother's letters. He thought I was decluttering, but I was categorizing memory, deciding what would follow me and what would rot in this house with him. I cooked more, laughed when he told a joke, listened when he talked about nothing: car problems, groceries, a neighbor's dog barking too late at night. I nodded at all of it, like I was still here, still attached, still his. I played his game better than he did. When he left the room, I folded laundry. When he returned, I was humming softly. He asked what song. I said, just something I used to love. He didn't ask what. He didn't really want to know. Some nights, he asked if I was okay. Better, I said. Stronger. He looked relieved, because a stronger version of me meant less guilt, but also more threat. He didn't know which one scared him more. I started writing letters I never sent. To him, to her, to myself. One of them said, "You mistook my silence for blindness. You thought I couldn't see because I didn't scream. But I was watching you prepare your freedom while I built mine in shadow." He left town again, Santa Rosa probably, said it was a conference, left behind a suit still in the cleaner's plastic. Forgot to take the black duffel bag he always brought before. I opened it. Inside, folded clothes, a framed photo of us, dusty, as if he meant to bring it to appear sentimental, but hadn't touched it in months. Underneath, an empty jewelry box. I wondered what was meant to go inside. Something for her, maybe. I didn't confront him. I zipped the bag, left it exactly where he forgot it, and emailed my attorney. I booked a storage unit in a different name. Drove there while he was gone. Brought a few boxes at a time, old journals, photo negatives, small keepsakes that only I knew mattered. The woman at the counter asked if I was downsizing. I said yes, then added, just making space. I changed my will, removed his name, added my sister, not out of pettiness, out of clarity. The man waiting for me to die would not inherit the life I rebuilt. He came back smelling like the hotel, the same soap, the same muted aftershave he only wore when he was away. He brought me a mug, Santa Rosa Lighthouse on the side. I held it like a gift from a stranger, said, "Thanks." He smiled, proud of himself, proud of the mask. I met with the notary the next morning, signed the final documents, created a trust in my name, moved accounts, closed joint ones, notified the bank to require dual authorization for withdrawals. Everything quiet, everything in motion. I hired a private investigator only for confirmation, not because I doubted what I knew, but because I wanted undeniable proof. Photos, audio, a date-stamped archive. He called 2 weeks later. "Got what you need," he said. That was all. I opened the email on a quiet Thursday, a folder, 29 photos, 3 recordings. In one, Mark is on a bench kissing her neck. In another, he's handing her a key. The recordings were worse. His voice, her laugh, plans, dates, a line I'll never forget. "I just need her to believe I'm still trying. 2 more months and she'll let go herself." I played it once, then deleted it from the inbox, saved it to 3 external drives, put one in the safety deposit box, gave one to my lawyer, and the third, that stayed with me, close. He kissed me that night, said he missed me, asked if I wanted to take another trip soon. I looked at him, said, "That sounds nice," then went to the bathroom and vomited. Not from chemo, not from sickness, from the weight of knowing everything and still having to smile. But it passed, like everything else had. I kept pretending, because pretending is power when you're the only one who knows it's a game. I asked him what wine to serve at dinner with friends. He answered like a man comfortable in his castle. I asked if he wanted steak or salmon this weekend. He said salmon. I ordered steak. I bought a new journal, leather-bound. On the first page, I wrote, "This is not revenge. This is return of power, of voice, of self. He will not see it coming, and I will not explain it." I smiled more, laughed when appropriate, held his hand in public, let him believe we were healing, let him believe I was still his. But every hour, I was leaving. Not with a suitcase, with documents, copies, dates, rewritten wills, redefined ownership, a web so carefully spun he'd never feel it close until it locked around him. He called me champ again last night. I almost laughed because he thought I was still fighting to keep this alive. He didn't know I was already free. He left again this morning, Santa Rosa or wherever they go now. He kissed me goodbye. I said, "Love you." He said it back without looking me in the eye. The moment the door closed, I exhaled, deep, steady, then opened the notebook and wrote, "This is the last week he'll think I'm his." He was gone when it happened, which was the point. I didn't want him home, didn't want the drama or the guilt or the endless gaslighting I knew would follow if he saw it coming. I wanted the first domino to fall while he was sipping coffee in another woman's bed. I wanted silence to be the sound that shattered everything. It began at 9:02 a.m. That's when the documents were hand-delivered to his workplace, a formal letter from my attorney. The subject line was simple: dissolution of marriage, full disclosure enclosed. Inside, the scanned photos, the rental receipts, the audio files, the spreadsheet, the updated trust documents, a letter stating that I had retained sole legal control of all medical decisions, financial assets in my name, and property I had purchased. There was no threat, no demand, just the facts, the whole damn thing, printed and bound, truth on paper, no way to twist it. At 9:13, I changed the locks. Not dramatic, just a locksmith in a gray polo shirt with a soft voice. He asked if it was a divorce thing. I nodded once. He didn't ask more. He just worked, respectfully, like a man who'd seen this before. By 10 o'clock, I had packed the final box into the car. Not mine, his. Shoes, Ties, cologne, the coffee mug that said best husband. I didn't break it, I just placed it carefully on top, along with the note, "You left long ago, I'm just catching up." At 10:30, I dropped the box off at his office. Front desk didn't blink. They paged him, but I told them not to bother. "Just returning his things," I said, smiled, left. At 11:04, he called me. I didn't answer. He called again at 11:06, then texted, "What the hell is this?" Then, "You're overreacting." Then, "Can we talk?" I turned the phone off, went to the garden center, bought 3 new plants: lavender, rosemary, something green I didn't recognize but liked the shape of. At 1:42 p.m., my attorney forwarded me his response email. He denied nothing, just asked for time, asked for privacy, asked for the chance to explain. I wrote back, "There is nothing I want from you but silence." At 3 p.m., I met my sister at the new apartment. She brought wine. We sat on the floor because the furniture hadn't arrived. She asked, "How do you feel?" I said, "Like the room just stopped spinning," then laughed. Not bitter, just free. That evening, he showed up at the house, the old one. I was already gone. He stood at the front gate, called my name once, then again. I watched on the door camera. He paced, looked up at the window, said my name like he still had a right to it. I didn't respond. He banged the door once, then left. At 9 p.m., he sent a final text, "I'm sorry." I didn't delete it, but I never replied. I spent the next morning in my new kitchen, small, quiet. Sunlight poured in through a window above the sink. I made eggs, toasted bread, ate slowly. No one watching me, no one pretending to care while planning his exit. Just me, breathing. He emailed again the next day, said he never meant to hurt me, said he got lost, said things were confusing. I didn't open the attachment, didn't care what he wrote, because here's what I finally knew. If someone can lie while holding your hand, they can't be trusted with your life. He tried mutual friends, told them I was being cold, said I'd snapped. One of them reached out, left a voicemail saying, "He seems really upset." I saved it, then blocked the number. I met with the therapist that week. She asked what I wanted next. I said, "Peace." She said, "What does that look like?" I paused, then said, "No one explaining themselves to me too late." The next time he emailed, I replied with one line, "There will be no more words." And there weren't. A week later, I drove past the house, the old one, saw a light on upstairs, but I didn't feel pulled toward it. I felt untethered. That house didn't hold me anymore. It held shadows of a woman I no longer was. He tried once more, showed up at my therapist's office, waited outside. She told him to leave. He left a note with reception. "You were everything. I just didn't know how to stay." I never picked it up. At the notary's office, I finalized the last signature, the divorce filing, the power of attorney revocation, the updated health directive. My name, clear and alone, no longer beside his, no longer dependent on his care, his money, his lies. He stopped reaching out, eventually. Or maybe he kept trying under new names, new numbers, but I had stopped checking. I was no longer in the story where he mattered. At the garden center, the woman asked how the lavender was doing. I said, "Thriving." She smiled, said, "They're resilient." I nodded. "So am I." That night, I lit a candle, sat on the couch alone, not lonely, just alone. There's a difference, and I had earned it. The first strike wasn't rage. It wasn't revenge. It was control. A line drawn with steady hands, a door closed without a bang, and a woman finally on the outside of his story and the beginning of her own. The court hearing was set for a Tuesday, 9 a.m. No delays, no ceremony, just a date and time printed on white paper. The air that morning felt dry, still. I wore a black blazer, not for mourning, for armor. He arrived 10 minutes late. Of course he did. Still adjusting his tie, still acting like he wasn't unraveling, still pretending the man who betrayed me could pass as someone worth listening to. His lawyer tried to smile at me. I didn't return it. I wasn't there to make peace. I was there to hold a mirror. The judge was older, female, sharp eyes, didn't waste time. She asked if both parties had submitted evidence. My lawyer nodded. So did his. His folder was thin. Ours was not. We began with the financials. I watched his face as the judge read aloud the hidden accounts, the transfers, the luxury rentals billed to our joint card, the deposits he'd labeled as medical expenses that led straight to hotels with ocean views. He blinked, cleared his throat, didn't speak. Then came the photos, her hand in his, them kissing outside the rental, her in the driver's seat of my car, the one he said was in the shop. He shifted in his chair, looked at his lawyer. She didn't meet his eyes. Next was the audio. The room fell quiet as the clip played. I just need her to believe I'm still trying. 2 more months and she'll let go herself. Someone in the courtroom gasped. Not me. I kept my eyes forward, hands folded, heart steady, because I wasn't hearing it for the first time. I was watching everyone else hear it for the first time. He finally spoke. Things were complicated, he said. The judge raised one eyebrow. He continued, I made mistakes, but she held up a hand. You didn't make mistakes. You made plans. His mouth closed and stayed that way. They read my statement next, a letter I had written but not spoken. The clerk read it aloud. This is not vengeance. This is not anger. This is clarity. I lived in a house of performance while I was dying. I was lied to while asking for help. I was used while begging to be seen. And now I'm done being polite about it. He didn't look at me while it was read. He looked at the table, then the wall, anywhere but at the woman he tried to erase before she was even gone. The judge ruled, quick, sharp, final. Full dissolution of the marriage, no contest on the financial division, my name cleared from all shared debt. Property split in my favor. Restraining order pending based on documentation of emotional manipulation during illness. The courtroom emptied fast. He lingered, waited near the doorway, tried to catch my eye. I walked past him like he was a coat on a chair. Outside, the air smelled like pavement and heat. My lawyer touched my shoulder. You okay? I nodded. Not because I was fine, but because I was done. And sometimes that's the better feeling. Later that week, news spread. Small circles, friends, neighbors. People stopped me in the market. I didn't know, they whispered. I said, I did. They nodded, didn't know what else to say. What can you say to someone who was dying while being lied to, who got better and walked away? His sister emailed me, said she couldn't believe it, said she always thought we were perfect, said he must have lost himself. I didn't reply, because he hadn't lost himself. He'd just shown who he really was when he thought I wouldn't survive long enough to matter. I started a podcast, just me, no names, no revenge, just stories about quiet abuse, silent betrayals, the kind of heartbreak that doesn't come with bruises but still fractures you clean through. People listened, wrote in, said that was me too, said I thought I was crazy, said thank. One day, I got a letter from her, the woman in the photos, the woman who drove my car. It was handwritten. She said she didn't know I was sick, said he told her I was angry, unstable, already moving on, said she left him, said she was sorry. I didn't respond, not because I hated her, but because I no longer lived in the part of myself that needed apologies. He tried once more, emailed me a year later, said he wanted closure, said he hoped I was well, attached a picture of a new dog he adopted. I blocked the address, not because I was angry, because I had nothing left to give him, not even a reaction. My friend asked once, "Do you wish you'd screamed, yelled at him, confronted him to his face?" I said, no, because the quiet was louder, the silence was surgical, and he will never forget the way I didn't flinch when the truth landed. The showdown wasn't dramatic. It was clean, legal, unavoidable, and it ended the way all things end when you stop letting someone else narrate your worth, with truth standing and the liar walking away. No one clapped when it was over. No champagne, no posts, no parties. Just a woman packing the last box of someone else's lies, sliding it across the floor, and choosing to walk away with nothing but her own name. The new place was small, 2 bedrooms, one used for books, the other for sleep. The kitchen smelled like lemons and unfinished wood. The windows stuck sometimes. The water ran too cold in the mornings. I loved it because everything in it was mine. Every chipped mug, every uneven picture frame, every quiet corner with nothing to explain. I bought a used armchair from a woman who hugged me too long when I picked it up. She said, "Divorce?" I said, "Freedom." She nodded, wiped her eyes, said, "Me too." The first week, I didn't speak much, not out of pain, out of peace. After so many months of pretending, planning, and holding back tears that never came, my body needed stillness, so I gave it quiet. The dog came on day 10, a neighbor's rescue who wouldn't stop circling my gate. I named her River because she moved fast and always found her way back home. I started baking again, just for me. Cookies no one judged, bread that sometimes failed, tea cakes that crumbled too early but still tasted like comfort. I stopped worrying if I left dishes in the sink. I stopped folding towels the right way. No one tracked my schedule anymore. No fake check-ins, no passive praise, no questions with sharp hooks hidden in them. Just the sound of my own feet across my own floor, deciding my own next move. I started therapy again, not to fix anything, just to witness what I'd survived. Some wounds don't need stitches, they need space. So I gave myself that, every Tuesday at 3. A cup of warm tea after, a slow walk home, a night that didn't need explaining. The lavender on the windowsill bloomed late. I almost gave up on it. Thought maybe I'd bought a bad plant, maybe the soil was wrong. Then, one morning, it opened. 3 small purple stalks. I touched the petals and whispered, "It's okay, I'm late too." I deleted the old emails, all of them. Didn't read them again, didn't need to, because remembering is different than reliving, and I wasn't in the business of building shrines to men who disappeared before I did. My sister came over with a bottle of wine. We sat on the floor. She asked what I missed most. I said, being able to close my eyes and not wonder who's lying to me. Then added, I don't miss him. I miss the version of myself who thought I was safe. She nodded, didn't try to fix it, just poured another glass. I wrote a letter I never mailed. To no one. To myself, maybe. It said, you didn't fail. You believed someone who wanted you gone before your body could leave. That's not weakness. That's proof you were still capable of love, even at your most unloved. I stopped checking social media, blocked the names that used to haunt me, even the ones that hadn't done anything, because healing doesn't require permission, only space. I opened a little online shop, prints, handmade cards, poems on linen paper. I made enough to cover groceries, gas, dog treats. Enough to feel capable again, enough to not need to ask. Sometimes I still woke up from dreams where he was there, not yelling, just present, in my house, my chair, my kitchen, and in the dream I'd be frozen, mute. Then I'd open my eyes, see the ceiling I chose, the bed I made, and exhale so deep my lungs ached. That was the price of remembering, but it got lighter every time. The neighborhood kids waved to me now, called me the cool lady with the dog. One of them asked if I lived alone. I said, I live free. They didn't get it, but one day they would. On the 1-year mark, I went to the ocean, brought no photos, no journal, no symbolic gesture. Just me and river and a sandwich wrapped in paper. We sat in the sand, watched the tide move in and out. She chased birds, I watched clouds. Then wrote one line in the sand before we left. Not gone, just different now. I didn't need closure. That word was too tidy, too final. What I needed was continuance, the right to exist beyond the version of me that had been discarded. And now I had it. People asked sometimes, "Are you dating again?" I said, "I'm learning to trust quiet again." They'd laugh nervously. I wouldn't. Because trust is not about romance. It's about being able to sit in your own skin and not hear someone else's voice telling you to change. I painted one wall blue, just because. Hung wind chimes by the door, put fairy lights in the garden, lit candles on slow nights. And if anyone asked why, I'd say, because I like it. I wasn't healed, not fully, but I wasn't hiding anymore, and I wasn't waiting, not for him to apologize, not for justice to feel satisfying, not for someone to arrive and make it make sense. I had already done that, quietly, on my own. I didn't plan to speak, not really, not publicly, not after everything had already been said, signed, filed, and silenced. But it turns out healing has its own voice. It waits, quietly, until it knows you're ready. Then one day, it clears its throat, and you realize it's yours. The podcast episode wasn't supposed to be personal. I was just going to talk about recovery, about moving on, about building small things, shelves, gardens, morning coffee, after your world falls apart. But when I pressed record, something else came out. I told the story, my story, not the one others saw, the real one. I said, when you're sick, People watch your body. They count your weight, ask about your blood. They watch your hair fall out, your eyes sink, your hands tremble. But no one watches your heart. No one notices when it goes cold from betrayal, when it becomes heavy from the weight of silence, when you're grieving the person next to you and you're not even dead yet. I spoke slowly, not with anger, not to shame him, just to reclaim my place in the story. I talked about the files, the emails, the lies, but mostly I talked about the moments in between. The way my tea always came cold. The way he smiled at texts he didn't explain. The way the house felt airless even when the windows were open. And how I learned that betrayal is not always loud. Sometimes it's polite. Sometimes it says champ while it packs a suitcase. When the episode ended, I almost didn't post it. Then I did, and turned off my phone. The next morning, there were messages, dozens, from women, from men, from people with voices too long buried under other people's definitions of love. They didn't want revenge. They just wanted to be heard. A month later, I was asked to speak at a conference. Topic: invisible abuse. I stood at the podium in a soft gray blouse, my hair in a loose braid. Not powerful, not polished, just present. I looked at the audience and said, "This is what survival looks like." Not triumph, not applause, just the choice to keep your voice in the room when someone spent years trying to erase it. I didn't name him, didn't need to. The facts were already known. The silence between us was already permanent. The justice already done. But truth still needed breath. I started writing again, not just journals or legal notes, poems, short stories, letters I never mailed. One of them began, "Dear woman I used to be, you were never weak. You were quiet because screaming wasn't safe. You were still because moving meant more pain. But you were always, always aware. And now that I've stepped into your shadow, I finally see the strength you left behind for me to pick up." I moved to a small house near the coast. No one knows the address unless I give it. There's a dog now. Not a rescue, not anymore. She's just mine. We walk at 6 a.m. before the world wakes up. I plant rosemary, lavender, peppers. My bed is my own. The tea stays hot. Sometimes I still feel the echo of his voice, the way he used to say, "Don't worry, I got it," when what he really meant was, "I'm controlling it." I don't miss him. I miss the version of myself who believed him. But even that, even she, is coming back now. Slower, wiser, still here. I don't tell people the whole story unless they ask, and most people don't. That's okay, because I no longer need to convince anyone of what happened. I was there. That's enough. A friend once asked me, "Do you ever wonder what he says about you now?" I said, "I hope he says I was quiet, calm, and that he never saw it coming." This is my story now. Not the sickness, not the survival, not even the justice. Just this. The breath I take when no one is watching. The keys that belong only to me. The space I fill without apology. He said I wouldn't last. He said I'd fade. He said he'd stay until I was gone. But he was wrong, because I'm still here. And for the first time in years, I'm the one not looking back.